Hi, just out here starting a new painting. I thought I'd fire up this recording device while I'm playing around. We can pick up the conversation where it was before. So anyway, this is going to be an eagle. It is the same size as the osprey. It's just under 4 feet by 1 foot tall. So anyway, yeah, let me get this out of the way. So, I was going to talk about synchronicities. That's kind of where I left off on that last one. And it's a term that was brought about by Carl Jung, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever other ists he might have done. I'm not sure. But he coined the phrase, the synchronistic stuff. Also, he coined the phrase in his books of the ego, that being that part of the mind that is that voice we hear, like I was talking about. It's your mind talking to you. It's the rationalizing you do with yourself. But there's an odd thing about that ego, is that it is absolutely aware of everything you do. It's involved in the conversations in your head. It's involved in just everything. That's what it's there for, to bring up. If you're doing something, it's going to give you things that are going to be the dualistic side of whatever it is you're doing. So it's going to say all the, well, what about, what if, and all that. What if this happens? What about this? What if it happens? What if that happens? That's your ego talking to you. It's trying to confuse you and keep you on track for anything other than what is going to lead you to something other than what the ego thinks you want to do. And it is just a psychological aspect of our consciousness, that is the mind that creates the duality in your life. It's that part of life where you always have this opposite to everything, no matter what, male, female, black and white, up, down. It's dualism everywhere. That's what this world is all about, because in dualism is the only way you can experience this stuff. Otherwise, you're still in that singularity where everything is either blissful, or you're in the other side of that aspect, and where everything is hellacious. But there's no way out, and there's no other thing other than that one. So you have dualism, so you can experience the aspects of life. So, where am I going with that? Yeah, what's that got to do with the price of cabbage in Ireland? Not a damn thing. But it is the synchronistic side of things is kind of what I was left with after my NDE, that the things that were being filtered out, that I am not ready to know or understand, is a better word, that would understand better at a better time. So until that time is right, and I receive that information, it will be a synchronistic thing. It's going to trigger that memory. And then once it triggers, it's not like, oh, I'm trying to remember something. It's like all of a sudden it's there, and you really didn't know it was gone. But it's now there, and it just feels, okay, yeah, it's it's a memory. I remember this. And so, yeah, it's those synchronicities will light up something from the past. So every once in a while in my life, I'll see something and I'll look at it and I get a feeling when I see it. Not like I recognize it if it's the first time around. It'll be, I see something like, okay, I have this thing sitting here and I've never seen anything like that before, at least not right here. And so now that's caught my attention. And then I go, okay, whatever. I walk away and then a week later, I'm somewhere else, and all of a sudden, the identical object is laying somewhere else, right in my sight, and I'm going, "Oh shoot!" And at that very moment, this moment comes back into mind, and it's because of the synchronicity of that computer disk. That it is, I saw that before. What was I doing when I saw it, and why did I remember it? And I don't remember, what I had for dinner 3 days ago. So it's just that it's meant to happen. And it is meant to stir a memory. And that is how a lot of things I see, like especially bright lights, will bring back memories from when I was in that light in my NDE. And it's usually something pertaining to what was happening when I saw that light. To think of one case at hand would, let's see, what was there? There was, shoot, now that I want it, I can't think of one. It was, God, I said the light thing, and now it's all I can think about. Well, we'll get back to it anyway. The synchronistic stuff is just to key that memory back again. Okay, now I'm getting an image in my head. Okay, so there was a synchronistic time that came up before where something took me back to when I was on that other side, and it had to do with things that were coming up in my life that I was in doubt about which way to go. And I can't remember what the trigger was, but I remember the gist of it was actually a pretty big thing. I was getting ready to get out of the Navy, and something was telling me maybe I shouldn't. And I wasn't real clear about all that. And then the synchronicity was to, yes, I need to, for whatever reason, I didn't know, but I just knew I needed to take my, it was the end of my enlistment time, and I was offered $20,000 in cash, and in 1974, that was a lot of money. But tax-free, too, because we were over in, or no, when I got the offer, we were in the States, so it wouldn't have been tax-free. But anyway, it was whether I should get out or not. And I just, the synchronistic, whatever it was that keyed me off on it, was deciding for me to decide that, yeah, I need to get out. There was something that's going to be happening, and I need to just get out of the Navy. I'm done with my job there. And it turned out that before I got home and made that decision, I found out that my wife was pregnant with my daughter. So then, yeah, get out. But and so I had to, and so yeah, okay, I got out. That was just one synchronicity, but it happens so often, and now it's so frequent that I automatically see something, and if I get that feeling in my chest, I'd say, okay, so now I just stop. I stop everything I'm doing, and I'm just looking. What around here is something that I'm supposed to see, or do, or hear, or something. I just, that's that moment. you're trying to make some clarity. And yeah, so it's something that is so just inherent in me right now, and it's been growing ever since. Probably since my wife died, that's when most everything started happening. And so things, I just, I didn't have to stop and make decisions and think, because if I got that feeling, I just knew it's a yes. Don't think about it, just do it. And it's worked out most of the time. But then there's other times things didn't work out the way I thought they were going to. But it's not that they didn't work out, it just wasn't the way I thought it would be. So you can't really question or expect how it's going to come. The synchronistic things are going to come because you've asked for them, actually. They're in the plan, and there is no accidents or coincidences. If you've been thinking about something that you're trying to do and you want, and you would love to have it happen and have it here, and it really help out, you'd love it, and make you feel really good and all that, that is a manifesting technique that is inherent in all of us. If we want it, and we can actually feel what it would be like if I had it, and it can be anything simple, whatever, just anything. Or maybe it's not a thing, maybe it's something you would like to do. I test it every once in a while, and the one time I was getting interested in looking at buying silver through thrift stores and whatnot. Just people, they have it, and sometimes you can get some good deals on it. So silver flatware was what I was looking for, or anything made out of sterling silver. That was my goal for the day. And before I left, I just told myself, okay, I want to find a treasure, something that'll surprise me, something out of silver that maybe I won't even be interested in the silver. Maybe it'll be the intrinsic value of the thing in itself that I like, and it's only me. But whatever, I want to be surprised. I want to find a treasure. So I'm out looking. I went to 3 or 4 different places. And on the one place that I got to, and I didn't see anything at all except on a display, and it was, they were displaying, um, it was full of paintbrushes, artist paintbrushes. They were all stuffed in this thing that looked like a crystal vase or something, but it had a sterling silver base, a weighted silver base, and it was cut crystal, and it was holding these. They used it as a display piece to sell these paintbrushes, and it had been sitting there, I guess, for quite some time. It had a price tag on it, but it was on the bottom, and nobody had picked that thing up in I don't know how long. They'd just been using it as a decoration, and I picked it up and looked at the bottom, and it said like $50 for the pair. And so there's a second one, I thought, and so okay, I picked this one up, and I said, I'll get this. This is my treasure. And I headed up to the front desk, and they said, "Oh God!" They looked at the ticket, and he says, "Oh shit, we've had this thing for years." And I said, "Well, it was still there, but it says it's a pair. Do you know where the other one is?" And so they searched all over the place for that thing, and it probably got sold off on its own, or maybe it got knocked over in the crystal, it was like a hurricane lamp type candle holder, and it might have broke the glass or whatever. Who knows? But they had taken on using it as a display tool instead of merchandise, more or less. So anyway, she says, you want it?" And I go, "Yeah, I'll take it. If you find the other one, I'll take it too." And she goes, "Well, I'll give you this one for," I think it was $12. So it's got about a half ounce of silver in there. So right now that's what, $40. So it was, but I'm not interested in selling it, because now it's got a place in my heart. it's sitting on the shelf and all polished up and looking good, and I just got to go get a candle for it. But we do have a lot of power outages, and then I would be able to make use of it. So anyway, synchronicities, yeah, manifesting, they're all tied together. And some of those things that come back on my NDE or the accident. The accident, I've had a couple of things that came back that were actual memories of the accident itself. And they're just images flashing through. But the one had a story from the neighbor kid who saw the accident, the one I was running to, and when I talked to him later at the time I talked to him, he said the driver of the car had got out and was picking me up and standing me up, and she kept saying, "You're okay, you're okay." And he says that, you know, I was screaming top of my lungs every time she did it, and she kept saying, little boy, you're okay." And that little boy thing keyed a memory, and that when I heard that, all of a sudden I remember that lady and this hat she had on that was all messed around and stuff, but it was stuck to her hair, so it was like half on, half off. I couldn't figure out what. I just remember that hat. It looked like it should be falling off. But the other thing that stuck in my head, I didn't realize I was remembering, or at least I think I was, because whenever I smell alcohol on somebody's breath, I got the image of that lady. And then my neighbor Clayton, when he was telling me this, he said that the lady was drunk, and the police actually took her took her back to and wrote her a ticket. And years later, I learned that I had, following the accident, there was a judgment against that lady, and they had to put some money. I think it was like $500 or something was in a trust for when I turned 18 or something. And so we came back to Minnesota and got that in 1969. And that, yeah, I could, when we got there to pick that up, that was the other time I remembered it. But my mother was an alcoholic, and that smell on her breath all was a big key. Every time I would have problems with my mom and I'd smell that, it took me back to that accident, that lady in my face with that breath. But that was the only kind of thing I remember about the accident. I did remember, though, one other thing. The other thing was I saw I looked just in time when I turned my head, because somebody yelled, like, you know, stop or something. And I looked, and all I could see was the chrome and the headlight, which it wasn't on, but it was, you know, silvery. It was like right in my face. And that's the last image I've been able to acquire. And then that literally turned into that white light that I was standing in. And that's the other thing. It wasn't a light that was shining at me. It was, I was immersed in it. It was like a warm feeling that was giving off this light. And like I said, everything is about feeling. So I have to go with that. But when I was a little bit older and we'd gone back to Minnesota, I think it might have been for my grandfather's funeral, because he died not long after my accident. He might have been 2 years later or a year, probably about 1958, I think. and we drove back there for the funeral, and I stayed in a bedroom at my mom and or my grandmother's house while we were there, and there was a painting over the bed that for some reason scared the hell out of me. I don't know why. It was just a scenery picture, but there was something about that scene that I couldn't sleep in that bed. They would, as soon as everybody else went to sleep, I'd get out of the bed and then lay on the floor and go to sleep. And I don't never have figured out what the key was, but it had something to do with that accident, and I just don't know what it is. I have a very intense, uncomfortable feeling around heights, and that also triggers the feeling I'm flying through the air, like because that's the other thing Clayton told me is that when I got hit by the car, it made such a loud sound. And he says, I flew through the air about 5 or 6 feet before I hit the ground. And so, and I think he even bounced off a parked car when I was in my midst of my flight. I got busted up pretty good. I know I was in a cast. Both legs were in cast. The right one was in traction in a cast. It went all the way up over my whole body, torso, and over my shoulders and down my back. Both arms were immobilized because I had to be fed. I was permanently seated on a bedpan because I couldn't do anything. The cast had a cutout, I guess. What was it else? This is how my mother, or not, it wasn't my mother. It was my Aunt Mary described it to me, because she was taking, when my mom would come to the hospital to be with me, my Aunt Mary was taking care of my sister. And so then from time to time, Mary would also come to the hospital. And so I would get to hear stories. She saw all that. And then later in life, she was one of the few relatives I had. Hell, she was more, I talked to her more freely than I did my parents. My dad looked upon her as his replacement mother. He lost his mother when he was 6, right after he had that accident on his own self. So his mom was gone when he was 6. His dad was gone in his sophomore year of high school. And he was finished out high school, and more or less, even before that, when his mother died, from then on, his brother and my aunt were more or less his caregivers. He had to finish out high school, and that was for a couple of years he lived with them. Him and his dad, I think, was also living there. But this was now, you were in the, he was, so that would have been 38, 1937, 1938, and then 39. So it was the tail end of the Depression, but it was also some of the worst of the Depression, according to my dad. My mom, on the other hand, my grandfather was a very successful tailor, and the Depression really didn't hurt him because most of his clientele were very wealthy people. He made custom suits for a whole lot of millionaires in Duluth. If you don't know the history of Duluth, it is the iron barons lived out in Duluth, plus a lot of others. There's a whole slew of millionaire row of mansions in Duluth that are just impressive as hell from the turn of the century. All of the industrial age steel came through Duluth, iron ore from up on the range came in on the boats across Great Lakes, and then the coal would um, they would take the iron ore out back to Detroit and Pennsylvania to be milled, and then bring back coal and other things for the local economy to run those things. So it was a very busy place, and my grandfather made suits for people all over the world, I guess, that would come through his shop, and then my mom worked there too. So she didn't really, when we would talk about the depression, she said she really wasn't really that aware that, feeling it personally in her life, because they were fairly well set for the economy of the day. They were in real good shape. But my dad was the opposite story. He was at the other end of that spectrum, and he spent time working for the WPA and CCCs before the war. I think he was with the WPA. He was 21 when the war broke out, and yeah, so he was working in the camps, building trails and stuff around Wisconsin area, and then off to the war. But all of that synchronicity stuff has, for me, it's like reading a map. I'm following the breadcrumbs with these synchronicities. They just happen, and I just go with it. And it always if nothing else, it turns out interesting always. It might not be doing what it is I thought it was going to be concerning. So anyway, that's the main takeaway I have from that NDE. But later in my life, I started having things happen. Actually, it must have been around 1980. That's when my wife and I got married. And from that point on, things got different. I mean, things were happening that I couldn't explain. Not big things. I mean, like more than synchronistic, though. Like the one thing was I went up the Borders bookstore to look for, I was looking for a particular book on spirituality, and I was standing in the aisle looking down at the bottom row, because the way it was organized, the books I was looking for were down on the bottom. And back then, they had spirituality and occultism and witchcraft, and all of that was considered in the same category. So here was this book I was looking for on that bottom shelf, and I picked it out of there, and I was playing around looking at it and thinking, oh my God, this is a tough read, it looks like. And so it was The Course in Miracles. I thought, geez, I'm never going to figure this thing out, not with my dyslexia and whatnot. And so I went to turn and look around a little more, and a book fell out of the shelf up above me and hit the floor. I went, what the heck? It was, a good shelf or two above my head, and hit the floor. And I'm going, what the heck is happening? And it was like somebody was on the other side and just pushed that one book out, but there was nothing there on the other side but a wall. And I looked down, and the book was called The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. And you can still get it on Amazon or anywhere. But it was a book written by Gary, who had a experience that led him to his understanding of A Course in Miracles. Now, the odds of that were just astronomical in my head. I could not figure out how that could happen. It hits the ground right at my feet, and it's the very book I was thinking I would need something that's going to be like Cliff Notes for this, or I'm not going to be able to finish it. But it turns out it's 3 books in one. Of Course in Miracles has a text that is reading like you would any other book. The text was generated, well, the whole book was generated by a channeling of an entity or energy that said it was Jesus. And that everybody was going to eventually read it. It is not time critical in the sense that you have to do it right now, but you will at some point do it. Read the book, and you will move forward with it. And it might not be in this life. It might be your next incarnation, because maybe you won't get it clear here. But it isn't, it's what actually Jesus was teaching at the time of his crucifixion. And when you read the book, it's not about Jesus doing things. It's not even really talking about him. It is how teaching you how to do what it was he was teaching. And this is all stuff that also came out in 1947 when they found the Nag Hammadi text. All of this stuff was now being shown that it was also written down by Thomas and Jesus himself, but Thomas was the scribe that wrote down everything Jesus said in his presence. So that book of Thomas was revealing as all get out, because it explained what things in the Bible were talking about that Jesus was saying, but the perspective now had changed so that the meaning of what he was saying was not what is in the Bible that leads you to believe he was saying. It's totally different. So anyway, this whole thing was now had me hook, line, and sinker. And from that point on, I started picking up anything I could, all things in spirituality. And I was looking for explanations for my own experiences, because I've always known there's something more to what's going on than I am aware that I'm aware of. And that's kind of what it is. You don't know you're not aware of something until you become aware of it. And then all of a sudden, oh, yeah, I knew that. Why didn't I know it? So everything's like that. It's like waves, circular waves. Just they keep rolling over each other. And that's how it works. But anyway, so the NDE was really non-remarkable in a sense, other than within me, but it was kind of like taking a time-release pill. You know, it comes out in little bits and pieces, because if at any point I just all of a sudden downloaded everything I wanted to know right then about what happened and why and how and who am I and where am I and why am I doing what I'm doing, all those questions, there would be no point in my being here, because those questions are what I am here to find out, what they feel like, the answers to them. Why is there that question? Because I need to feel what that condition feels like. That was the whole thing. I am here to do that. But then it's kind of getting into more and more like my standing here in front of this camera. I was telling people who were telling me I should do this that there's no way. I'm not going to be able to stand out here in front of everybody and just talk. And then everybody, you know, it kind of just started happening, and then it's like, well, I'm not standing out in front of anybody except this camera. And what's there to be afraid of? Somebody going to reach out and take away my birthday? No, it's not. It's just a stall tactic for me not to have to put myself out there. But I've been putting myself out there all my life. I mean, I used to have to address crowds at where I worked, and at meetings and such, and that was hair raising. And I didn't go in there with a script. I just off the top of my head all the time, because I knew the knowledge that I was trying to express. And if you went to 3 meetings that I was running, the script was not going to be the same in any 2 of them, because I was on the fly all the time. It's just well, for one thing, first I was a cop, and then I was a salesman. And both of those is, you have to have a bit of a talent for talking on the fly. Just trust in what you know, and it'll be there when you need it. So yeah, it's been, there's nothing in this life of mine that I would change. Not a single thing. It's all here for a reason. It's all happening for a purpose. It wasn't an accident. Nothing's a coincidence. I got hit by that car because it was time. And that time was, I could either call it the end of the book, or I could continue on. And I decided to continue on. It was my choice. But yet, was it? No. I think it was always destined to happen. It just, in the matrix, I have to believe it was my decision. Nothing's ever my decision. And nothing happens to me. It happens for me to figure something out. And if I was standing here and the roof fell in and it killed me, it was time. So it didn't have a purpose. It was time. And it didn't matter, because you don't die until you say, okay. You might not be conscious. You might be in a coma, but you're still the one that says it's time. And I know that for a certainty, because I have been with other people who have died so many times, I can almost predict the time. At the moment, my daughter's sitting with somebody who's at that gate right now, waiting. Yeah. So, anyway, how long are we on this one? Oh God, I ran long again. Well, have patience. I'll get this figured out. But have a good day. Thanks for watching.